The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the polished marble floors of the Winchester estate, where 24-year-old Emma Collins carefully wiped down the antique furniture in the grand library. Her blonde hair was neatly tied up in a bun, and she wore the simple gray uniform mandated for all household staff, kept to the highest standard. Emma had been serving the Winchester family as a housemaid for 2 years. Since moving to the city to chase her dream of becoming a successful entrepreneur, the job provided a decent salary that covered her modest apartment rent, allowing her to save money while working on her business ideas in her spare time. Sebastian Winchester, the 26-year-old master of the house, lounged in his leather chair, reading financial newspapers and occasionally glancing up to ensure Emma was fulfilling her duties to his satisfaction. Sebastian had inherited his wealth from 3 generations of successful Winchester men, and had never worked a day for anything he owned. As Emma worked, she hummed quietly to herself, a habit she had developed to keep her focused on her long-term aspirations rather than the sometimes demeaning nature of her present job. She had learned to find joy in small moments, viewing each experience as a stepping stone toward her larger ambitions. "Emma," Sebastian called out without lifting his gaze from his newspaper, "when you finish with the dusting, polish the silver in the dining room. My parents are hosting an important dinner party tonight, and everything must be perfect." "Of course, Mr. Winchester," Emma responded politely, continuing her task with the same careful attention she applied to everything she did. Sebastian folded his newspaper and observed her with the casual curiosity that wealthy individuals sometimes direct toward their employees. "Tell me, Emma, what do you plan to do with your life? Do you expect to be a housemaid forever?" Emma paused in her dusting, contemplating how much to share with someone who had never shown genuine interest in her as a person. "Actually, Mr. Winchester, I am working on starting my own business. I have been developing an online platform that connects small businesses with customers in their local communities." Sebastian laughed, the sound echoing through the large library with a tone of condescension that made Emma flush with embarrassment. "A business? Emma? You do realize that successful businesses require capital, connections, and education? You can't just dream your way to wealth." Emma felt a familiar sting of frustration, but she kept her voice calm and professional. "I understand that building a business takes hard work and resources, Mr. Winchester. That's why I am saving money and learning everything I can about entrepreneurship." Sebastian shook his head with amusement. "Emma, you're a sweet girl, but you need to be realistic about your place in the world. Some people are born to own businesses, while others are meant to work for them. There's no shame in accepting your role." Emma set down her dusting cloth and looked Sebastian in the eye, her blue eyes flashing with quiet determination. "Mr. Winchester, with all due respect, I believe that a person's background does not define their future. Hard work, dedication, and refusing to give up on your dreams can take you places that birth and privilege never could." Sebastian's expression hardened at being challenged by someone he considered beneath his social status. "Emma, I think you've been reading too many fairy tales. In the real world, maids stay maids and wealthy families stay wealthy. That's simply how society works." Emma nodded politely, though inside, she felt a fire ignite that would fuel her determination for years. "Perhaps you're right, Mr. Winchester. I suppose time will tell." 3 years later, the grand estate next to the Winchester mansion had been sold to an unknown buyer. The property had been vacant for months, undergoing extensive renovations, and the entire neighborhood was buzzing with curiosity about who had purchased one of the city's most expensive homes. Sebastian stood on his terrace, watching as moving trucks pulled up to the neighboring estate. The new owner had clearly spared no expense in furnishing the house, with expensive furniture and artwork being carefully brought in by professional movers. "I wonder who could afford the Morrison place," Sebastian mused to his mother, who had joined him on the terrace. "Father said it sold for $12 million. Whoever bought it must have serious money." Mrs. Winchester adjusted her pearls and peered through her opera glasses at the activity next door. "I heard from Margaret Ashworth that it was bought by a young entrepreneur who made a fortune in technology. Apparently, they paid cash for the entire property." Sebastian felt a mix of curiosity and annoyance. He had always prided himself on being the youngest wealthy person in their exclusive neighborhood, And the thought of someone his age achieving that level of success through their own efforts, rather than inheritance, was unsettling. That evening, Sebastian decided to introduce himself to his new neighbor. He walked across the perfectly manicured lawns that separated their estates, rehearsing the type of gracious but superior greeting he typically used with new members of their social circle. He rang the doorbell of the grand mansion and waited, expecting to meet a tech executive or investment banker who had recently struck it rich. When the door opened, Sebastian's world seemed to shift. Emma Collins stood there. But this was not the shy housemaid he remembered. She wore an elegant white dress that complemented her confident demeanor, and her blonde hair was styled with a professional polish that exuded success and self-assurance. "Hello, Sebastian." Emma greeted him with a warm smile that held no trace of the deference she once showed him. "I was wondering when you might stop by to welcome me to the neighborhood." Sebastian stood there, stunned, his mouth opening and closing as he struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. "Emma, but how? This house costs $12 million. You were a housemaid." Emma's smile grew wider, a hint of satisfaction in her eyes. "I was a housemaid, Sebastian. But as I tried to tell you 3 years ago, that job was just a stepping stone toward my real goals." She motioned for him to come inside, and Sebastian found himself following her through rooms decorated with impeccable taste and furnished with pieces that were worth more than most people's annual salaries. "I don't understand," Sebastian said, still grappling with the image of the confident woman before him and the quiet girl who had once dusted his family's furniture. "How did you afford all this?" Emma led him to a spacious office, where computer screens displayed stock charts and business metrics that Sebastian didn't recognize. "Do you remember the online platform I told you about? The one that connects small businesses with local customers?" Sebastian nodded, beginning to grasp the extent of his earlier misjudgment. "It turned out that a lot of people were looking for exactly that kind of service," Emma continued. "The platform grew much faster than I expected. Within 2 years, we expanded to 50 cities, and major investors began to take notice." She pointed to a framed magazine cover on the wall, featuring her photo with the headline, "30 Under 30, Young Entrepreneurs Changing the World." "Last year, I sold the company to a Fortune 500 corporation for $48 million, Emma said matter-of-factly. "I kept a stake in the business, so I continue to earn from its success, but the sale gave me the freedom to pursue other interests." Sebastian felt the ground shift beneath him. "But you were just a maid. You had no connections, no capital, no advantages." Emma's expression softened. "You're right. I didn't have those traditional advantages, Sebastian. But I had something that turned out to be even more valuable." "What was that?" Sebastian asked, genuinely curious despite his shock. "I had the motivation that comes from people telling you that your dreams are impossible," Emma replied. "Every time someone dismissed my ambitions or told me to accept my place in life, it made me more determined to prove them wrong." Sebastian sank into one of Emma's expensive chairs, trying to digest the complete turnaround in their circumstances. "So you bought this house just to prove a point to me?" Emma laughed warmly. "Sebastian, I didn't buy this house because of you. I bought it because I fell in love with the architecture and the gardens. The fact that you happen to live next door is just a pleasant coincidence." She sat across from him, her tone now friendly, but no longer deferential. "I want you to understand something, Sebastian. My success didn't happen to spite you or anyone else. It happened because I refused to let other people's limitations become my own." Sebastian glanced around the room, taking in the evidence of Emma's remarkable transformation. "I owe you an apology, Emma. I was wrong about what you could achieve." Emma nodded graciously. "Apology accepted, Sebastian. But I hope you'll learn something even more important from this experience." "What's that?" Sebastian asked. Emma's eyes held a wisdom he was only beginning to grasp. That a person's worth is not determined by their current circumstances, but by their character, their determination, and their willingness to work toward their goals, no matter the obstacles they face. Over the next few months, Sebastian began developing a genuine friendship with his remarkable neighbor. Emma's success humbled him in ways his privileged upbringing never could, and he began to understand the difference between inherited wealth and earned achievement. Emma, for her part, bore no ill will toward Sebastian or his family. She had learned that holding on to resentment only limited her growth, and she preferred to focus her energy on building a positive future. A year later, Sebastian surprised everyone by enrolling in business school and starting an internship at a non-profit organization helping underprivileged youth develop entrepreneurial skills. He had learned from Emma that true fulfillment comes not from inheritance, but from what you contribute. At a neighborhood charity event, Sebastian proudly introduced Emma to his parents and their social circle as my neighbor and one of the most successful young entrepreneurs in the city. There was genuine pride in his voice as he spoke about her accomplishments. Emma smiled as she shook hands with people who had once looked down on her as nothing more than hired help. It's wonderful to meet all of you. I hope we can work together on some community projects that will benefit everyone in our neighborhood, she said. Later that evening, as Emma and Sebastian walked through the gardens connecting their two properties, Sebastian reflected on how much his perspective had shifted. Emma, I need to ask you something, Sebastian said. Did you ever doubt that you could achieve your goals? Were there moments when you thought maybe I was right about knowing your place in the world? Emma paused by a fountain, its waters sparkling in the moonlight. Of course, Sebastian. There were many nights when I wondered if I was fooling myself, if maybe the safe path would be better than the uncertain one. What kept you going during those times? Sebastian asked. Emma smiled, gazing up at the stars above their two magnificent homes. I realized that the only way to truly fail is to stop trying. Every setback taught me something valuable, and every small success gave me the confidence to take the next step. She turned to him, her expression serious but kind. The most important lesson I learned is that other people's opinions about your potential say more about their limitations than yours. When someone tells you that your dreams are impossible, they're usually talking about their own fears, not your abilities. Sebastian nodded, finally understanding. So when I told you to accept your place in the world, I was really revealing my own narrow view of what was possible. Exactly, Emma replied. And the beautiful thing is that it's never too late to expand that view. You're proof of that yourself, Sebastian. Look how much you've grown in just 1 year. As they walked back to their homes, Sebastian marveled at how completely his understanding of success and worth had been transformed. Emma had taught him that true accomplishment comes not from what you're given, but from what you do with whatever circumstances you find yourself in. The housemaid who had once cleaned his family's floors had become not just his neighbor, but his teacher, showing him that dreams have no expiration date, and that determination can overcome almost any obstacle. Sometimes, Sebastian reflected, the most valuable lessons come from the people we initially underestimate. And sometimes, the greatest gift we can give someone is to doubt their potential, because that doubt can become the fuel that drives them to achieve far beyond what we ever thought possible.